Hey guys, Karshik from OneTap. So in this video, I'm going to talk about check-in restrictions, a brand new feature that makes it harder for a student to sign in for another student. So let's pretend that we have a class over here called General Chemistry, and I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hit share check-in link. So this is how you get the QR code, and this is the QR code that professors will put up on the wall. They'll put it up in lectures, or they'll just put it up on the door. They'll just put it up at the entrance so that students can self-check in. The problem that we faced was as soon as students go into that link, they can just type a name and they can just check in. The problem is that like we want to keep it flexible and easy. We don't want to like sit down and like import everyone's names, or we don't want to like add a lot of restrictions like student ID numbers and all that. So we want to keep it fairly simple, but at the same time, we just want to add a little bit of restriction, a little bit of friction so that people don't sign in for one another. So if you go to the settings right here, you're going to see the restrictions tab, which is brand new. And the idea here is like you can add a date restriction, a location restriction, and then like an IP address restriction. So I'm going to click on the time restrictions and I'm going to add the time restriction in there. So let's pretend that for us, we just want to have 9 a.m. Chicago time to 11 a.m. Chicago time. And you can only check in during this time range. Can't check outside of that. And then we hit the back button right here, and then it's automatically in effect. So this is what the visitor would see if they scan the QR code. This is what the visitor sees. First thing that they see here is that like, hey, you're outside of the restricted time period for this list. Check-ins are only allowed between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Now, let's go back and let's add a date restriction. So the date restriction, I'm going to put that it's going to be November the 11th, 2025. Let's just say today, at 5 p.m. all the way to today at like 6 p.m. And right now it's 6:39 p.m. for me. So if I go over here and if I do a check-in right now, it's going to be outside of the date. Let's go back over here. Let's try 6 p.m. Oh, okay. Actually, that's just like a different time zone. So if I go ahead and if I put it for 4 p.m. and if I put it for 3 p.m., it should be fine. So now if we reload this link right now, be able to see that we are not allowed to check in between this date and time and that date and time. Now, now the most exciting restriction, or I guess the most useful restriction that people love about OneTap is the location restrictions. So this allows you to set a location marker, and people can only check in inside of that location boundary. This is super cool because I can go over here and I can just, for example, put like a college. Let's just say, for example, let's just say if I just take this downtown area right here, right? Downtown Dallas, and move it over a little bit over here. Just put it into this random place. I can just go over here and then I can add so I can just use that as a location boundary. I can also use my own location as well. And then now what will happen is if you go to that check-in link and if they scan and open it, it's going to say, hey, you can't check in because you're not in this location radius. You can obviously retry your locations. You can ask the web page to get your own location, and then it will basically show you that hey, you're outside the boundary or you're inside the boundary. Now, the first time that you come to the page, it's going to be grayed out and it's going to ask you to enable your location. You have to give us your location in order to check in because once the location restriction is turned on, it uses the browser device's location of the visitor. And it uses the GPS of the device to be able to do that. And then there's a few other kind of information over here about your current location and then all that. Now, the next restriction right here is restrict multiple check-in to a single IP address. This is a little bit experimental, but the idea here is that like if you already do a check-in with an IP address and you try to do another check-in, it's just going to stop you from doing the check-in. So the idea here is that the idea here is that like if someone signed into Wi-Fi and if they're on an iPhone, let's just say it's their personal iPhone device, let's just say it's just John's iPhone device, he does a check-in and then Sally comes in and he tries to go in there and check in as Sally on the same iPhone, it's going to prevent him from being able to do that check-in. So as an example right here, if I do Isabella, register and check-in, I'm checked in as Isabella. And then as soon as I go back basically to this page right here, so if I hit the done button and I go to Joanna, and if I do check in as Joanna, it's going to give me the check-in and check-in blocked because you already checked in with this IP address on this list at this time. So that's the IP address check-in restriction. That's kind of handy as well in order to deter people from checking in for one another. The device web fingerprinting is a little bit of a more it's a little bit more of an invasive feature. By invasive, what I mean is that it uses a lot of properties from our third-party vendor. And what it does is it basically tracks like cookies and stuff like that and adds a lot more information about the browser to identify if it's the same browser. And if it is the same browser, it will just stop that person from checking in. It is a little bit experimental. And then the other one that's kind of useful right here is the visitor app, because the biggest problem that we have on the websites is if you're doing like a web check-in link, the biggest problem that we have is that you can't, it's hard to store cookies and stuff, and because of all the different browser privacy reasons, um, we can't, like it's hard for us to store cookies and data in there that will identify that person, especially because of incognito mode. You got different browsers like Safari, which have their own cookie tracking, and then they have their own privacy stuff going on. And then you got Google Chrome, which has its own policy. So with Visitor app only, they have to download our OneTap Visitor app in order to be able to check in. It's on Android and it's on the Apple App Store. So the idea here is that you would use this because on the app side, we could definitely have like a unique ID that's on the that's embedded into the app that's saved on the app, and that will persist even when they delete the app and reinstall it. And then what we basically do is we just check that unique ID of the device, and we just say, okay, well, you already checked in with this device, so you can't check in twice. Yeah, so give it a try. I'll make a dedicated video on the visitor app, and then we'll talk about the check-in flow and the feature. Let us know if you have any questions, and let us know what do you guys think about the feature, as well as any feedback and new ideas are definitely welcome.